Hi, welcome everybody. Today's lecture is about attitude change in the digital age. Can you truly change someone's mind? We will discuss attitude change and the psychology of attitude formation, behavior change, and persuasion and resistance. These ideas also apply to social media, news, advertising, which are bombing us daily with compelling messages. The question is, can you change someone's mind? Throughout this lecture, we'll look at the nature of attitudes, what makes them resistant to change, and the psychological mechanisms behind persuasion. At the end of this lecture, you'll understand how attitudes form, how they affect behavior, and the mechanisms that change attitudes in our digital world. Starting with a basic definition, the text states attitude refers to our relatively enduring evaluation of an attitude object. Our attitudes reflect feelings about people, ideas, objects, and events. These evaluations are long term viewpoints that shape our worldview. We use attitudes as mental shortcuts to navigate complex social context. Attitudes contain three main parts, and we call it the ABC model. A for effective, how we feel about something. B for behavior, our actions towards something. C for cognitive, our beliefs about something. Think about a business owner's perspective on AI tools at work. Cognitive assumptions refer to how AI might improve or hinder workflows. The affective component includes excitement or even anxiety about technology at work. The behavioral component includes adopting some AI technologies and avoiding others. Whenever these three elements align, attitudes best predict behavior. The ABC model of attitudes explains the complexity of how we evaluate. Mindsets are different and attitudes have different strength. Specifically, strong attitudes are easily remembered, resistant to change, and better predict action. Therefore, attitude strengthens our ability to recall and predict our attitudes. Corner observed that among many other characteristics, attitude importance predicted attitude strength the most, which means importance strengthens and stabilizes an attitude. Important attitudes last and predict behavior. Think about a cause you care about, like politics or education. It does affect your behavior. Be mindful of how rapidly your evaluation affects your daily decisions and discussions. How do attitudes become actions? The textbook educates on the theory of planned behavior, which gives a good framework. This theory states that attitudes, subjective norms, and perceived behavior control determine our behavior. For example, you strongly prefer reducing the amount of processed food you consume. Positive attitude toward limitations. And you know that many healthy people do so. Supportive subjective norms. However, suppose you work late and prefer the easiest alternative. In that case, you may struggle to comply with your processed food boundaries. Low perceived behavior control. Attitudes and behavior may be different, but this theory explains why. What makes someone persuasive? According to the textbook, effective communicators have traits that help them influence attitudes. The most convincing people are typically attractive, trustworthy, and knowledgeable. They convey this confidence. Ads use these ideas to impact consumer opinions and often use celebrities or experts. Influencers in the digital world have mastered these elements, building trust and expertise even among strangers. Emotional reactions or deliberate processing of personal information are the main ways we process persuasive communication. Researchers call this the primary pathway to persuasion, which is an intentional, systematic analysis of a critical topic. It strengthens attitude modification. When we're not motivated to think deeply, we focus only on those peripheral cues like the communicator's beauty or believability, resulting in shorter term attitude change. This dual process explains why some messages stick and others just fade rapidly. Not everyone is readily persuaded. People usually resist changing their minds, especially about important issues. Forewarning, selective exposure, and attitude inoculation and psychological reactance are the ways to avoid persuasion according to the textbooks. These mechanisms explain why intense persuasion rarely changes strong beliefs. Behavior can influence attitudes in reverse. Self perception theory proposes that people sometimes form their opinions by watching themselves. A weak beginning attitude makes this likely. Consider volunteering at a prison. Without strong thoughts about prison ministry, you may have a positive attitude toward visiting inmates if you consistently watch yourself doing so. This theory explains how acts can evolve into actual attitude changes. I had no opinion on prison ministry but started going with someone else. And over time, I developed a positive attitude. Let's get back to our main question. So, can minds truly be changed? Cognitive dissonance says yes. And also, cognitive dissonance is a powerful attitude changer. The textbook describes cognitive dissonance as a psychological pain when our actions contradict our expectations or beliefs. We can adjust our habits, rephrase things, or think differently to ease this discomfort. When contradicting ideas cause psychological pain, people adapt their attitudes or behaviors to manage these tensions. A health conscious person who drinks alcohol daily may discontinue moderate consumption or convince themselves that drinking a daily glass of wine isn't really that harmful or improves even health. Dissonance theory explains why we change our minds following tough choices. Interestingly, positive self esteem helps transform attitudes. Secure self worth allows people to consider different views without getting defensive. Reflecting on personal ideas and strengths through self affirmation might open up new ideas. Self affirmation tactics like remembering key beliefs improve persuasion openness. According to the textbook, people with high self esteem can face inconsistencies without feeling threatened, making them more susceptible to attitude adjustment. Deep, persistent attitude change involves motivation, patience, and the ability to digest complex information. The textbook describes two persuasion pathways that affect views. The main method is evaluating reasons to change attitudes. Social media networks favor emotionally engaging information that prompts immediate peripheral processing rather than deep concepts, which makes lasting attitudes change on important subjects so much harder. Now, I'd like to describe an active learning exercise to help solidify these concepts. In this 15-minute exercise, students will observe possible attitude changes through personal reflection. First, write a strong opinion on an index card and what might change it on a second card. Next, you switch that card with another student and use the theory of planned behavior to shift attitudes, social norms, and perceived control. If time allows, students will present their persuasion paths At the same time, the class chooses which method to use: cognitive, affective, or behavioral. This experiment shows how numerous factors can affect views through persuasion. It also puts theoretical principles from our course into practice by creating appealing arguments. To conclude, oh, to conclude this lecture, let's recap. Attitudes influence thoughts, feelings, and actions. Effective communication, motivation, and resistance mechanisms are key to persuasion. Self perception and behavior can shape attitudes over time. Cognitive dissonance, self esteem, and persuasion pathways are needed to change minds in the digital age. In response to our initial question, can minds truly be changed? The process of changing minds is complicated. Addressing cognitive, affective, and behavioral components together usually leads to lasting attitude change. Echo chambers and algorithmic filtering reinforce beliefs in the digital age. Understanding the psychological factors we've discussed, persuasion and openness to new ideas, I recommend you use these principles to persuade others or to remain skeptical. Today's lecture references are here, and thank you for listening.